Your ability to hold safer space is more important than your sales strategy. It's more important than your content plan. And dare I say, more important than your niche.
We are represented. We are represented. We are represented.
Welcome to Represented, the podcast. I'm Aniki Shuru, racial equity coach for online business owners who want to be intentionally inclusive by building a business that is racially equitable. I created this podcast to normalize a conversation around racial inclusion so that fear is no longer the barrier that gets in the way of doing this work. This isn't about perfection, it's about progress. Whether you're taking your first steps or you're well-versed in the journey towards racial equity, this space is for you. So welcome home, friend. Let's get started.
From coast to coast, around the globe, we are represented.
June 30 is just around the corner, and that means it's the end of financial year soon. To mark the moment, I'm offering something really special, 50% off my signature program, Represented. This is a program where I support online business owners on their racial awareness journey so they can build businesses that are intentionally inclusive from the inside out. And right now, we're not just navigating inclusion, we're navigating it in the age of artificial intelligence. AI can be a brilliant tool, but let's face it, it's not neutral. The more we rely on it to streamline our systems and support our content creation, the more we risk building bias into our businesses without even realizing it. That's why Represented now includes guidance on how to use AI ethically and inclusively, while still holding space for the heart of this work, racial equity. When you join by 30 June, you'll save $1,000. You'll get instant access to the pre-work module and be all set for the next round in October. So, if you've been wanting, or rather waiting for the right time to do inclusion work in a space that's been lovingly prepared with outstanding resources tailored to online business owners, this is your moment. All the details are at anikishuru.com/represented, and the link is in the show notes. Hey, welcome back to another episode of Represented Podcast. I want to begin today's episode with a truth that I believe every coach, creative, and course creator needs to hear. Your ability to hold safer space is more important than your sales strategy. It's more important than your content plan. And dare I say, more important than your niche. Now, hear me out, because we're not just in the business of building and growing businesses. We're in the business of holding people, real people, people with stories, people with real identities, and people with real wounds. And I think right now, we really need to remind ourselves of this, because what we see on social media is not a full picture of what it means to hold people. More often than not, we're being sold the story of, look how much money I made as a coach. And whilst money is important and essential to growing your business, it's taken the place of what our focus should be, and that is holding people well in our coaching containers. In a world that often dismisses, minimizes, or even misunderstands difference, your ability to hold space inclusively is simply not optional. So, what does it actually mean to hold safer space? let's break it down because safe space has become the it's such a trendy phrase that has become overused over the last few years. And when we begin to use phrases over and over and over, they begin to lose their significance. And so I want to go through a couple of different scenarios where I share with you what it means to hold safer space. Firstly, it means recognize power dynamics, even when they're invisible to you. This is understanding that as the coach, your client is looking to you to guide them. But that doesn't mean you are there to tell them what to do and what not to do, especially in business coaching relationships. It's so easy to completely rely on your coach and default to their advice over your own. As a coach, it's important that you realize the power you hold and how to navigate that relationship with care so that it doesn't lead to such a high level of dependency that your client can't do anything without getting the thumbs up, the okay from you. It's very easy for the relationship to shift from an empowered one to a disempowered one. I also know as people of color, there's a tendency to look to whiteness, especially if you have a white coach, as the person who knows more than you, paying them to tell you what to do and how to do it in a way that outsources your ability to think for yourself, for us to think for ourselves. To hold safer space means to create room for people's full humanity, not just their purchasing power. We see this all the time. Coaches who are great at selling you what they have to offer, but get into the coaching container with them, and it's not what you thought it would be. Or the care given prior to purchasing their product was so high, and once you've swiped your credit card, they're a different person altogether. Now, of course, such relationships or even businesses of that kind don't last the long run. But what it does is create a level of distrust in our industry where potential clients feel commoditized rather than served. Seeing someone's full humanity is taking the time to get to know the person so well so you can hold more intentional space that meets them where they are. To hold safer space also means to be aware of how identity, such as race, culture, gender, ability, shapes how people move through the world. And if you don't have the sensitivity, you won't be able to hold safer space because you can't hold space for identities you are not aware of. I see this in particular show up in business coaching relationships where coaches hold space without the cultural sensitivity required to support their client through their content strategy, their sales strategy, or even their pricing strategy. The client ends up feeling like they're not living up to the expectations of the coaching container, and they begin to either pull back or become hard on themselves, which could then lead to issues such as mental health and more. To hold safer space means to, and this one's a really important one, respond with humility, not defensiveness, when harm occurs, because we're not immune to causing harm, but we can be careful about it. And especially how we respond really plays a role in how bigger harm it then becomes or doesn't become. I think it's very much in our human nature to get defensive when something goes wrong. Rarely do you see people calm and collected when harm occurs. It feels like they have to explain themselves so that they're not branded or labeled as being this person who is A, B, or C. Responding with humility, it takes practice. It's about active listening. And this is something I learned how to do when I was studying to become a life coach. Humility feels like it's the weak option, but in truth, it takes strength to respond with humility and not be defensive. And safer doesn't mean perfect. Absolutely not. It means being more aware. It means being more honest. And it actually means being more responsive. What's really disappointing in the coaching industry and what we don't talk about enough is the ability to hold safer space. Because so much of the coaching industry is built on performance. It's really built on the ability to produce. How productive are you? And that kind of personal power. And not nearly enough is built on care, humility, and real responsibility. It's been treated as a get rich quick scheme. It's where coaches are showing up to cash in and not to hold their clients with care. I've seen too many coaches skip this work thinking that mindset tools or trauma certificates, certifications, they're enough. But really, are they? For example, if you don't understand how racism shows up in your coaching container, how whiteness is centered in your frameworks, or how your clients of color might be filtering themselves to stay safe, then you're not holding space. You're just holding control. And you know what happens when safety isn't present? People stop. They stop showing up fully. They self-protect. They shrink. They leave. And they rarely tell you why. If you've never had a client of color name discomfort in your space, that doesn't mean it hasn't happened. It probably means they didn't feel safe enough to tell you. Clients of color often experience microaggressions, coded language, or being spoken over in containers where the leader is well-meaning but unprepared. And it's not always overt. It can be never seeing their culture reflected in the examples that you use, being asked to see themselves in a framework that doesn't include their lived experience, having their emotions labeled as too much or too sensitive or too loud or too quiet. Maybe you're listening to this and going, Annie, I don't have any clients of color. So all this you're talking about, it doesn't really apply to me. I'm good. No, you're not good, my friend. Just because you don't have clients of color doesn't mean learning how to hold safer space is not for you. It's like saying, hey, you know what? I don't need to learn about racism because I don't have anyone in my network who is a person of color, and so it is unlikely I will cause harm. And here's what I have to say about that. Not true. When you learn to hold safer space, you're not just learning it for your clients of color or people who identify differently from you. You're learning how to be a more inclusive human. And what that then does in return, it makes you a better coach for everyone. When I think about people with physical disabilities and how accommodating their needs, such as ramps in shopping centers, automatic sliding doors that open and close, car spaces that are close to the entrance and they're a bit bigger so that they can maneuver. I'm so grateful as a mother who has been the beneficiary of some of those modifications because when I had little children and I had to push a pram everywhere I went, those accommodations felt like I was seen, felt like I was welcome in those spaces, and just made the whole journey a lot more easier. And here's what I've come to learn. When we take care of those considered the least in society, we take care of everyone. Because I know it's not just me as a mom who's pushing that pram who benefited from that. It's also the elderly. It's also those who might be unwell. It's also those who might prefer to have that as an option than perhaps taking the stairs or for whatever reason for that particular point in time. You see, in a coaching industry that's flooded with sameness, and I mentioned this a couple of episodes ago, same funnels, same messaging, same tones. What sets you apart? I believe what sets you, us apart, is how people feel in your presence. Can they breathe in your space? Do they feel seen, not just as buyers, but as full human beings? And that's a hard one because our industry has really taught us so much about the making of money that a lot of times we forget to see people as full humans and we see them as potential buyers, as potential clients. How can I be of service to this? But how can I be this person's coach? How can this help my business grow? How can I reach this goal that I have financially? But really, it's coming back to that question, do they feel seen, not just as buyers, but as full human beings? Do they leave your containers feeling expanded or reduced? These are the questions that matter the most, but you won't find many of these things being shared widely. And the coaches who can answer them with clarity and care are the ones who are trusted. And not just for this period in time, but for the long haul. These are the coaches who are building sustainable business because they are in the business of caring for people first. And this is what my 10-week signature program Represented is about. Not surface level inclusion, not performative allyship. When I first created Represented back in 2020, it was very much the intention to teach people how to identify racism and how to do better. It was very much a program that was based on issues to do with race and how can you be an ally. What I didn't anticipate was what it would do in return. It did so much more than just teach about race. It really brought the art of holding safer space, not just for the benefit of those who are racialized as Black, Brown, Indigenous, or people of color, but those who identify however else. What I've come to realize is that It's equipping you to understand how racial dynamics show up in coaching spaces, how to name harm without spiraling into shame, how to communicate with care, especially across cultural difference, how to embed equity into your client experience. I mean, we're talking about from onboarding to offboarding. It's not always easy. And it's something that a lot of coaches will go like, this is in the too hard basket. This is not my focus right now. But I can tell you this hand on heart. It is so, so worth it because it is essentially equipping you to hold safer space. Now, if this episode has stirred up something in you, I want you to know that Represented is open for enrollments right now at 50% off until June 30. We begin again in October, and when you join now, you'll get access to the pre-work, lifetime access to all future updates, and a step-by-step path to becoming the kind of coach who doesn't just want to do better, but actually knows how to do better. Head over to anigishuru.com/represented for all the details, or DM me on Instagram if you've got any questions. The links are in the show notes.
We are represented. We are represented. We are represented.
Thank you so much for tuning in. Why don't you go ahead and hit that subscribe button and leave a review so this podcast can reach more online business owners, and together we can begin to normalize racial inclusion in the online coaching space. I'd love to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land where this podcast episode was recorded, the Wiradjuri people in central New South Wales, Australia. Music produced in Nairobi, Kenya by Patrick St. P. Mbaru and Kambua Mathu. Vocals by Joanne Matata.
Represented.